Hi, everybody. My name is Jim Harrold. I'm your professor for PA 8410, Human Resources Management, for fall 2018. It's already 2018. Sorry, I forgot what year it was. Um, so, most weeks of the course, with week one accepted, I am going to present you with a PowerPoint overview briefing or lecture, if you will. So what I do with those lectures is I make them in PowerPoint, turn them into a video, and I provide you a link on the course on the Canvas website. So for this week, I'm giving you this video so you can put a face to the name because I think it's important for the online environment for students to realize who the professor is. If you show up at UNO and you see me wandering around, you can say hi. Um, some of you might come to the orientation on Friday, though I think most of you are advanced students and this isn't your first semester, so I probably wouldn't see most of you. But here I am in the flesh. This is the last time you'll see me recording a video like this. For most other weeks, there will be, as I said, the lecture. Now, the lecture, just as a reminder, and most of you know this because you've been in coursework already, the lecture is not a substitute for the reading, nor is the reading a substitute for the lecture. They are all supposed to work in conjunction with one another. In other words, the lecture complements, not replaces the readings, just so we're clear on that. But what I want to do in this really short video is introduce myself, and then I want to talk about the course a little bit. So I have been teaching at UNO since about 2011. I've taught undergraduates and graduates. I've been working in the Master of Public Administration program since about 2016. So I've taught several classes in the MPA program, uh, including, well, actually, this is my first time teaching this one. I have taught the 8050 and the 8090 and some policy classes, as well as intergovernmental management. I am an adjunct professor. So I don't have regular office hours. So if you want to get a hold of me, look at my contact information on the syllabus as well as on the Canvas website. I am more than happy to schedule a sit down meeting with any student if you happen to be a local student. Um, and of course, this is an online class, so local students or distance students really are all treated the same as distance students. If just as a matter of convenience, if you happen to be a local student and you're on campus, I'm happy to meet with you if you'd like to do that. Typically what I'll do is I'll meet somebody in the library at a mutually agreed upon time. Otherwise, if you want to have a consultation, I am more than happy to talk with you on the phone. I included my cell phone number on the syllabus. You can call me, just don't call me after about 10 o'clock at night. On Monday and Wednesdays, I'm in class uh, at Creighton, as a matter of fact. Um, so I'm not available those days, but I am available usually in the evening on most nights of the week, which is convenient for most students, as it turns out, because I think a lot of you also have full-time jobs. Otherwise, if you have questions, please email me at my UNO email address. I will answer your questions as promptly and as frankly as possible. So please don't hesitate to do that. So the course itself really leans more towards the practical. This course is not that theoretical. I'm not talking about organizational theory here. What we're really talking about is some practical matters regarding running a public or nonprofit organizations. That's what our focus is on during the course. Now I said that, but I want to start with week one. And in week one, I actually take on a subject that I want you to consider. And I give you a couple of articles to read. As a matter of fact, I'm not asking you to read from the text during week one. But I'm asking you to read a couple of articles. One is from the Wall Street Journal, and basically that article is geared towards the for-profit sector. But the question asked in that Wall Street Journal article is it the end of employees? And so what that article is asking is, are organizations, and again in the for-profit sector, are corporations at the point where uh, they are not going to hire as many employees per se, but they are going to outsource, or they're going to hire a lot of short-term or contingency employees to do work for them. And is that the way our economy is going? The other article I give is from somebody's blog. I'd ask you to look at the veracity of some of the sources the author cites. That's fine. But basically, that author's main contention is that we are moving towards what some people call the gig economy. In other words, people aren't expected and probably don't expect themselves to work for one organization for years and years. So, why do I include that? Well, here's why. Um, History doesn't always repeat itself, but it uses a common vocabulary. Um, it really wasn't until the industrial age in the United States and the Western world that people started working for one company or one enterprise for life. Um, that actually picked up a lot of steam post World War II. Post World War II, the United States was really arguably if not the strongest, certainly the strongest, but for a few years, perhaps the only viable industrial economy in the West. So all these soldiers that came back from World War II um, and went to work in factories or went to work for corporations, basically the bargain they were making was that they were going to work for a company for life. And along with that went a lot of benefits for them, as a matter of fact. Um, they pretty much, for large corporations, had pension plans, they had health insurance, they had, vacation time off. They had a lot of the benefits that we think of as normal HR kind of benefits um, in the working world. All those things really came to be post World War II. Because, even though people were working for companies pre World War II, it was starting to evolve in the industrial era more. But in the 1800s, this nation was founded on what Thomas Jefferson dreamed of as an agrarian economy. So basically, people were yeoman farmers. That was Jefferson's vision and dream for the United States. Yeoman farmers who worked for themselves, or they were artisans who plied a trade. My ancestors came to Nebraska as homesteaders and farmed. Many of your ancestors did the same thing. Um, Again, our economy changed. But what happened? Well, what happened was industrially, other countries began to rival us. We began to see more of a flattened world and more globalization, to the point where it's impossible now, really, unless you consciously go out and try to buy local, and you can buy local farm produce, things like that. You could actually uh, employ local artisans and um, textile mills to make products for you. But for the most part, the consumer economy that we live in buys things that are produced in a global market, right? Even a t-shirt. The cotton might be grown in Alabama or Mississippi, but that cotton is milled in a country in Asia, the the fabric making process is perhaps in another country. The t-shirt making process might be in another country. The t-shirt ends up back in the United States, and you buy it um, for not very much money. And that's the result of globalization. But what happened in the public sector? So what happened in the public sector was post World War II, government bureaucracy grew. It was what we know as the administrative state. So Dwight Waldo wrote this famous book in 1948 called The Administrative State. And what he was talking about in 1948, if you read the book, is that the United States and its allies had really just saved the world from itself. Um, and now, in this new world order that we were going to live in this great society, he actually used the term great society in that book in 1948, long before President Johnson came up with his great society programs in the 1960s. He said, in this great society, we need to have uh, expert administrators to run it. And so we did. And so we saw post World War II the tremendous growth of government agencies, not just at the federal level, but at the state level as well, and then at the city level. And so uh, most people who went to work for government agencies initially got paid far less than their counterparts in industry. How did we make up for that? We made up for that with some pretty good benefits packages, to the point at which now, when the economy started to change in the 1980s and 1990s, in the private sector, we saw the loss of benefits. We saw fewer and fewer pension programs, to the point now where it's very, very hard to find what we call a defined benefit pension program in private industry. There are some. You just won't find that very many of them, where the company agrees to pay a defined benefit pension when an employee retires. Most pension programs, if companies have them at all, are based on a contributory savings plan wherein the employee puts in money and the company puts in money. On the other hand, as it turns out, most pensions in the public sector continue to be defined benefit plans, although other plans are now being introduced. But but the dominant program for public sector employees is still defined benefit plans. Okay, so what's all that have to do with strategic human resource planning? Okay, so what's happened in our economy is that as companies have tried to find ways to economize in a global economy, they have they started with uh, reducing benefits, and pensions were one of the first ones to go. Healthcare plans um, are, in some cases, another victim of that. So even before the Affordable Care Act, you saw a lot of companies reducing healthcare plans. Um, and if you look at some reputable data, such as from Kaiser Family Foundation or Pew Research, what you'll see is all from about the late 1990s, say around 2000, to 2010, when the Affordable Care Act was implemented, the, the rise in wages was just very slight. It was almost relatively flat. But the rise in healthcare premiums was a much steeper curve. And that is because the cost of benefits continues to rise. The cost of healthcare, particularly, continues to rise. And so, uh, companies began to outsource and began to hire contingency employees. But now that trend is hitting the government. And so I'm starting out week one with this article in the Wall Street Journal, and I'm asking you to, I want to think about this question, which um, is it the end of the employee? That is the classic employee. The answer is, I'll give it away. The answer is it isn't. Because for the rest of the semester, what we're going to do is use that book, and we're going to talk about public and non-profit organizations and what goes into running those organizations from a practical standpoint. But towards the very end of the course, I'm going to hit for a week or two on this idea of government and nonprofit organizations using contingency employees. Government and nonprofit organizations contracting out functions, uh, government and nonprofit organizations divesting themselves of certain functions except core functions, however they define core functions. So I want that thought to be in your mind as we go through the semester, because I really think that the economy is changing, and for most of you, um, you're growing up in a different generation, and that is a generation where I think you can expect to change careers more times during your lifetime. So this old model of working for the same organization for your entire working life, I think by and large is going to fly out the window. I don't think it's extinct by any means, but I think it might be an endangered species. Okay, so let me really quickly, because I see my time, I've talked for 15 minutes now. Let me really quickly talk about how the course works. So there's 4 units in the course. At the end of each of those units, I'm going to give you a graded summary to do. So the summary sometimes takes the form of a journal. In a couple instances, it's going to take the form of an exercise. So that's going to be a graded assignment at the end of each uh, unit as I lay it out on the syllabus. So the other graded activity that I do every week is a discussion. On the weeks where I have you do a graded journal or a unit summary, there won't be a discussion. Most of the other weeks, there will be a graded discussion. So the point is that every single week of the course, there's some graded activity. Okay, so discussions. Here's how I look at discussions. This is an online class. We do have discussion boards. Here's how I look at them. The point of a discussion board is not for you to somehow cipher out what you think I'm thinking and spit back that answer and I say, oh yes, you're right and you're wrong. I will give you feedback when I grade each discussion. What I think a discussion is an opportunity for students to really do the reading or watch the videos that I give you to watch, and then present your points and discuss that with each other. That is how I would like discussions to work. So I give you a minimum to do in posting an original discussion and then responding to peers, but feel free to go way beyond the minimum because I want you to observe and think about what the other people in the class are doing. And that's how I think discussions are how they work best. So the final element is there is a term project and it is a strategic human resources issues paper. Okay, so what do I mean by that? What I want you to start thinking about is what are some issues in human resources management, and I want you to research that. In a nutshell, that is your term paper. All the details in the syllabus, so please read the syllabus. Okay, so that's it. This is me. Um, Again, feel free to contact me. I am available. I do welcome questions. Uh, I welcome your input because I like to keep an online class vital and important to you as you pursue this degree. So without further ado, I'm going to close this out and I look forward to your participation this semester. Thanks a lot.